All right, so I'm gonna just kind of jump to the chase here. We talked a little bit last week about mentors that have been in your life that have made an impact. Yes, we did. And so kind of what I want to dive into today is, how would somebody go about finding a mentor? I mean, is it basically you just write them a letter, write them an email, stalk them, basically do everything you can but get a restraining order until they say yes?
You could try that.
That's kind of what I had to do.
What do you think about seeing Verde?
Who?
Yeah, you could try that. So I think what I quoted last week was identify the person that is a version of as close to a version of your future self as possible, and then engage that person. Now, some people's future version of themselves is The Rock, right? Mm-hmm. Or Richard Branson, or Elon Musk, or something like that. And so those guys aren't engaging them personally, eyeball to eyeball, is usually not an option. But most of the time, when you have people at that level of success, you can always find a book, find a program, watch their Twitter, their whatever, follow them along in those aspects. But what I was identifying last week when we spoke was, yes, if you have the opportunity and you're interested in finding a one-on-one, eyeball-to-eyeball mentor, then you look for the person that is the closest to a version of your future self, and you go to them, even if they're a stranger. Oftentimes they're not. Sometimes they are. You go to them and you say, hey, I'm at a phase in my life. I'm looking for mentors. I've identified you as someone who I look up to. You have accomplished some things, at least from an outsider looking in, and I'm interested to see if that's something that's ever crossed your mind, and what could I do to get my foot in the door, or is that something you're even interested in?
Right.
Yeah.
So basically finding someone who's like the future you of who you want to be is kind of what you're saying. So
yeah, if you want to be a physique competitive bodybuilder or something like that, then you need to find the guy in the gym that's a trainer that's what you want to look like aesthetically, right?
Right.
Or if you want to be a better doctor or a better attorney or a better entrepreneur or a better home builder, developer, anything like that, then you...
I'm trying to be like a future version of myself right now. So
folks, if you just got a screenshot of that, you see that my friend here has put his hair into
I've got a baby.
Sad little baby man bun.
I got a baby bun going on.
Anyway, so I guess I'm a version of his future self, which that would be tragic. But anyway, so you identify someone like that, and then you go after them and say, without stalking, without having to get a restraining order, et cetera, you're like, hey, I want to introduce myself. I'm so-and-so, and this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And a lot of times you'll get a yes. Most people will be kind of flattered. Some will be taken back, like, really?
Right,
wow. Yeah. But I have had a few people tell me, man, great. That's awesome. I appreciate that. But I just don't have time, or I don't know what I would show you. Or they're so disconnected from that philosophy or that mindset of mentorship, right, that they just don't get it.
Right.
And so it was a polite no, never like a flat out hell no, but sometimes you get a no.
So, but I guess you also at the same time, if you're going to get a no, then you also probably need to work on your pitch, because you're probably,
that might be
if they're not able to see enough value in you that they can get from you. I mean, I guess every business owner is going to want a return on their investment. So if they're time is money, as a friend of mine told me one time. So if they're having to invest their time in you, whether that be 5 minutes or it be an hour,
yeah,
regardless of someone who's like you block out your day.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've got someone that you need to work with and spend time with them, then you're investing your time into them.
Yeah.
So they're going to want a return on that. They're going to want to see some value that's being given.
There's 2 ways to do that. One is offer up your services for free. So in the case of my team and people that come to work here, if they have a skill set or a talent and they want to put it to use inside our organization, we typically say, show me, especially if we're not looking for someone. If we're looking, then we're probably more inclined to be like, yeah, show me for a few weeks and then we'll do a deal. But I mean, if I'm full, if I don't need any additional graphic designers and there's a graphic designer trying to kick in the door because they want to get in and be a part of what we're doing, then they're just going to have to show up, without compensation and show me what they can do, or do it outside these four walls, bring it to me and go from there. But so what that component looks like is you going somewhere to put in some effort, some work into someone's world, whether they're a singular business person or running a big organization, et cetera. And you're going to work for free, but in exchange for that, you're going to be right here next to them. Mm-hmm. Or at least throughout the day, you're going to have an opportunity, for what they're doing to rub off on you. And that's sort of a mentorship, which is kind of a lot of my team members. They get it by osmosis, or they get it, indirectly, hearing everything, seeing everything that goes on, especially these two guys. I mean, they're getting every single detail that comes out of my mouth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think I've mentioned that before. So that's one way to look at it. You can go somewhere and put in some effort, and the exchange is you're giving them free work or free whatever you want to call it, and non-compensated involvement in their day. And in exchange for that, you get to be near them and around them. So that's one way to look at it. The second way to look at it is to say, hey, I think you're an awesome CEO running this financial institution, and I want to know how you run it. I'd like to be around you, but at the same time, I have a job or I go to school full time or whatever it is. Do you have any time in your schedule where you could meet with me and we could talk and I could ask questions and you could answer, especially after the person has engaged you and said, sure, I'm interested. Then you can do that a couple of different ways. You can say, hey, I would love to buy your lunch once a week. So $12, $15, whatever that costs you. And we have an hour together, and I'll bring lunch to your office, like a little mini catering. I'll bring it to your office and we'll hang out, or we can go somewhere and get out of the office. Pardon me. And that kind of compensates them for the time, and they're going to have to eat lunch anyway. They're going to have to pay for it if they don't have, unless it's a restaurant owner, then he might eat for free. And so that's one way to also do that. And that's probably the most frequently used is, how can I just meet for you for a short time? You might offer, like if it's a business person that travels, you might offer to drive them on their commute to the airport and then pick them up. It depends on how deep you want to take it. But every business owner, myself included, has downtime when we could be doing something else. And or we might be working on something else, and we might be interested in making that available to someone who thought about it. From someone who is mentoring and has mentored and continues to do it, it's extremely flattering when someone outside of your world looks inside your world and says, "Wow, I would like to know more about you and what you do." And so that's flattering, right? So the typical answer is, wow, that's cool. I appreciate it. I'm interested, but I don't know how to do it, because it's a flattering comment or engagement for the party that you're talking to. If they're terrified by the thought of it, then it's just a no-go. You're going to have to find somebody else.
Well,
but I think those two ways. I think you go and you try to offer some value in some exchange for services, or you offer some value in some, like I said, trips to the airport, meals, or something like that. Those just tend to happen less frequently. Like if you do free engagement where you go to someone's establishment and their business and you go show up 5 days a week, you have 5x times of actually that 1 day a week lunch. So you're going to get that, maybe 50 times really, because you're going to be there all day long for 8 hours a day. And that's not feasible for some people, and I get it. But I think I brought up an example, and we'll jump on your question in a second, of someone who has an aspiration to be a coach, right? And they find a coach that's local or one that's somewhere that they feel like they can work with or be around, and they just offer, hey, I'm going to come to your practices. I'm going to watch everything you do. I'm not going to get in your way. I'm going to get your players' waters. I'll carry your clipboard. I'll be a quiet mouse in the background. I just want to listen and see, because I can learn from you. Really, you know what I'm saying? Because most of that's audible. It's not like one-on-one what did you think about the book you read? It's not like that. So it depends on what you're doing, So I think there's instances like that where you can bring value. It's not necessarily free work. It's not like an 8-hour day of free work, but it's this on-the-job training kind of thing.
Yeah, and I guess at the same time, like you said, you may have to like move on and find a new one, but I guess at the same time, you're constantly learning. You're constantly learning you're either learning how to do it the right way from a mentor, or you're learning how to do it the wrong way. So, in kind of an example, I could that's going to lead into my question is I have a friend who does personal security for a lot of well-known people, and he was doing security for someone, and they were a well-known motivational speaker. And before they went out to talk, had a psychological meltdown. Didn't want to go, didn't want to do it, but then just put the face on and went out and did it.
Wow.
So it's almost kind of like, there are people that we can idolize that we think they're one way, but they're really not genuine enough they're just a wolf in sheep's clothing. And so what do you look for in that to say, hey, yeah, this isn't someone I really need to let be my mentor?
I can think of some real fringe cases where that may come into play. Like if there's a successful business guy in town and he's really not a successful business guy. He's laundering money for, the mob or something like that. Or there's probably some scenarios like that. But usually when you're an outsider looking in, your aspirations are not that fringe. And so most of the people that you're going to talk to or engage are going to be stand-up dudes. I don't think you're going to run into that very often. Yeah. Now, do people have multiple facets to their personalities to where they may be that dramatic and on stage they're a freaking superstar?
Yeah.
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's okay. I don't think that makes him a bad mentor. It depends on what you want him to mentor about. I think another thing, too, don't get hung up on the fact that we're kind of identifying how do you find a singular. I've got 4 or 5 people that I talk to regularly now. So, and those mentors to me now is not like me seeking out, loftier individuals and higher production individuals and higher net worth individuals. For me, it's just people that I'm in tune with.
Right.
And they can be financially less advanced and advantaged as I am, or way more. It can be a friend, who's just been through some stuff that I may be going through at this time. Maybe I have little kids and his kids are grown, but we're 2 years apart, that kind of thing. So different aspects. So don't be afraid to get multiple mentors. And, if you're concerned about matters of finance, maybe you get mentored by someone who runs a bank, but you're in comedy, so you're mentored by someone who does customer service, because customer service can be funny as hell. So it's just different things like that. And I would encourage everyone to not put all their eggs in one basket, to use a cliche statement, and to have multiple mentors. And it's not like you're meeting with them daily. Very infrequently is it even weekly. It's usually, there have been some people in my past I've met with once a month, once a quarter, twice a year, but it's enough that there's that constant touch, looking in, them looking back, and there's some engagement there to where it's, beneficial.
So what if you have multiple mentors, but they have different opinions on certain topics?
I think it's great.
You just bring that in.
I think different opinions. I think different opinions is where truth finally comes out.
Yeah.
Right. And I can think of a dozen different examples, but if somebody says do it this way and somebody says do it this way and somebody says do it this way, you have 3 different opinions. That's great, because then you have 3 different vantage points to look inside and say, well, which one do I want to be more like? And an opinion's not a wrong answer.
Right.
It's just the way that guy did it. We talk about some guys that want to work 8-hour days and go home and be with the family the rest of the evening and never work a weekend. And we talk about guys who work 18-hour days and work every Saturday, and they only go to church on Sunday or something. I mean, there's not a wrong way. I think you have to find your center, and I think helping to find your center is tied up in finding multiple opinions and points of view and experiences. So I think it might make you more well-rounded to have 3 different individuals who have 3 different opinions.
And I guess it's also at the same time, you may have 3 different opinions. There's 3 ways of doing something, versus if you were doing on your own, you may end up doing it 10 different ways, but at least they can save you the shortcut to where you can try something 3 different ways versus 10.
Right. And I mean, we don't want to have different opinions on things that are ethical,
Right.
It's either ethical or it's not.
Yeah.
There's no gray area. You're either a truth teller or you're not a truth teller. You're either abide by the rules of the tax code or you don't.
Right.
I mean, there's just certain things that are black and white. But I think when it comes to an opinion on like, how should you budget for your business? Well, there's going to be 12 different answers to that. And everybody's goals are different and there's no wrong answer. If that guy wants to hoard more for his business strategy and this guy wants to be a free spender more for his business strategy, great. You just have to figure out your piece, how that works for you. And so I think it's actually probably more beneficial to have multiple points of view, opinions, however you want to define it, to get to that place to where you're finally defining who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah.
So I like that. That's a great question.
So, because then I guess putting that in perspective, like where were the areas that your mentors maybe differed when you're kind of getting started? I know you had your restaurant mentor. What was his name?
Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy Yen.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'm learning things.
You are learning. It's
and
good.
So I say you take Tommy Yen. I mean, I'm sure that he had a different opinion than some of your other mentors. Or what did you learn from your mentors that maybe you still use today that you pass down to other people that you're mentoring? And what do you not use that they may have taught you?
I have probably forgotten way more than I have put to practice. Almost to the tune of information overload, especially since I'm an avid reader, and we talked about identifying mentors who are not necessarily geographically close, but they're Instagram, Facebook, New York Times bestsellers. And so you end up with, different things like that. So probably forgotten way more than I have put into practice. So I don't know how to answer that other than to say that they all probably played specific roles, and I'd have to probably dig pretty deep in the memory bank to find those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I do remember a couple of instances where, from a benevolent standpoint, like I think every organization, one of our tenets of operating is to give. We've talked about that several times, to serve. And so I have had some run-ins where my benevolent attitude may have superseded a partner or a mentor's benevolent attitude, and there was some like almost rigid guidance there. Like, yeah, you really should have done it like this. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is giving. I can do what I want, But that was few and far between. I'm thinking probably... I think back when I was more of a leverage mentality from a financing standpoint, I think I had people telling me, don't be leveraged and you shouldn't be leveraged, and, make better choices and control your money, all that kind of stuff, manage much better. And I didn't pay attention to those at that place in time. And that stuff came full circle, and I learned from that. And so now I'm back to where they were then. I was opposed to it.
Right.
And now I've come full circle, and I'm like, wow, they were right. Or their opinion was more accurate for what I was doing. So, yeah, I think that I think there's some good and some bad that comes, but I couldn't recall them mostly in detail.
So what would you tell your 20-year-old self now if you were mentoring your 20-year-old self that maybe they didn't share with you or they didn't teach you? What's something that you learned on your own?
Ooh, that's a great question. What's something I learned on my own? Probably, and I apologize for the long, awkward pause. We can probably edit that out.
Awkward pause.
We'll do a little voiceover.
Awkward pause.
Probably, what did I learn on my own? I think the number one thing I learned on my own is that people have high expectations and demands and very little grace and gratitude in general. So that goes back to the whole overcommit, underperform thing. When you make an error, even if it's known you're about to make an error and you go through with it anyway and you just rush in kind of thing, I think the amount as a young entrepreneur of what I expected from the marketplace as far as gratitude and grace for my hard work or my effort was far loftier than I actually received. Like, people were vindictive. People were cold. People were coarse. People were pissed. Instead of, like, I feel like I'm the exact extreme opposite of that. I'm just like, whatever, let's go. You know, and until it becomes a pattern. But a one-off, and maybe I was like that in my 20s. I just don't remember, or 30s and don't remember. Now I think I'm a whole lot more full of grace and stuff like that, because I require so much of that still. But I think that's the one thing I learned on my own. No mentor that I ever had said, look, Green, look, everybody's an asshole. Your customers are going to hate you. There's going to be people you can't please. You know, just get over it and move on. Because I think it kind of wounded me in some aspects, little wounds along the way where you try and you try and you try and you just couldn't make that person happy, or you just couldn't get that person off center of wanting to crush you and take you out. And I think that was something I learned on my own, that I think deep down inside people are good and want to be good, but in those certain situations revolving around finances, revolving around money, there can be some really cold-hearted shit that goes down. And I just, as a young business guy, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting, like, maybe I was just too lofty on myself, and I thought, hey, here I am, world, buy my shit, and it went badly. But no, that's probably the one thing I don't recall anyone ever telling me, look out. You know, there's bumps in the road. People are like this. Right. So that's probably the only thing I could remember right offhand.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Wow, this was a good one, though, to learn. Had to learn it 4, 5, 6 times.
I know, and we're going to have to get into that. I mean, I know there's, a lot of, in order to be someone that knows a lot about everything, you've had to learn a lot about everything. So,
yeah, for sure.
I think that origin story is coming. We're still teasing it.
Still teasing it. There's a lot of depth to that. It's like that uncharted territory in the blue hole in the ocean. Yeah. I don't even want to go there.
Yeah, no.
But yeah.
No one wants to. And we don't have to, we don't have to go swimming in the ocean. We can lay out on the beach and just look at the
lay on the
waves.
beach and have a cocktail and talk about it. That might work. Let's do that version.
Coffee.
Or coffee too. Let's do that version. Well, man, I hope that helped a little bit. What else?
No, that's all I have today. I mean, it's pretty short and sweet. I feel like that, if you're going to get a mentor, you need to just go out there and ask.
Yeah.
What's the worst anybody's going to say to you?
Yeah, I've heard several people in the past say this, but I think most recently I heard Gary Vaynerchuk say, one of the biggest problems with people in general is that we answer no for the other party before we ask the question.
Absolutely.
So we just don't ever ask.
Right.
And so I think you might be thinking that professor at school that's a really great biology professor and you want to get into biology, he could be a really cool mentor. Or that person that you know from work, you see him, he's always posting on Facebook all of his awesome pictures with his kids, and you really suck at being a dad. Maybe he's a mentor. And then, anything, fill in the blank. Doesn't matter. And the word mentor has such a astute kind of feel to it. Like, oh, I'm a mentor. I mean, it's just basically a confidant, a friend, someone you can say, hey, what would you do if? And that person gives you the information. Mm-hmm. It's not like this big expanse of an idea. I mean, so don't be so intimidated by, if I left everybody with one thing today, don't be intimidated by the connotation of mentor, mentee, that informational exchange. Don't be afraid to ask. And like, I would stop listening to this podcast right now and go to your phone if you have that person's number and pick up the phone and call them. Or shoot them a text and say, hey, you got a minute? I want to talk to you about something. And just do it, Because if you don't do it today, you'll forget about it tomorrow. And pretty soon it'll be August and then Christmas. And then we'll be in 2020 and a whole year will have passed by. So,
and if you're still on the phone right now and you didn't call somebody, you're not looking for a mentor.
That's right.
Kind of reminds me of the end of Big Daddy. And everybody's like, they call their dad at the very end. It's like, I love you, Dad.
That's pretty good. I hope to get those calls someday. Well, man, I'm glad I could help you.
Absolutely.
Everybody else, go get you a mentor or be one.
That's right.
You could do that too.
If anybody wants to ask me any questions, you can just DM everything that I know, and SE Green will read them to me or send them to me.
There you go.
So I will be glad to mentor someone one day if I ever have that opportunity.
You're going to be
now prepared.
You're going to be mentoring some 25-year-old college grad that's got themselves deep in credit card debt about how to pay off their car and pay off their credit card.
Come on.
But you're on the path, right? You're
Right.
halfway there.
Right.
And so now you have strategies and tools to give someone that's younger than you. So it's just how deep
Right.
is your bucket of tools?
Right.
It's
Absolutely.
coming. It's coming.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Have a good one. We'll see you next week.